It's been a funny year for Sea of Thieves, and that's a nice way of saying it's been a terrible year for Sea of Thieves. Now, I'm not going to hate bait all the things added this year. Some of them have been really impressive. The new weapons, the new tools, and the new world event have been pretty cool, but unfortunately, it was a year where the hype outweighed the reality. The new weapons are fun. Apart from this, the new tools are fun, but not really needed, and the new world event is as successful as a train wreck. In summary, it's been some cool stuff, but they've all fallen short of actually changing the game world in any respect, which is what they were supposed to do. Most players are entirely ignoring it all, and we've just all gone back to the grind of leveling factions the old way, Reaper hunting, or having a virtual 6-hour tour of this place. But with the start of a new 365 days, what could be added to Sea of Thieves? In recent podcasts, they are very aware that Sea of Thieves fell far from the mark this year, and it shows. The player base has practically been cut in half, the stability of the game is at an all-time low, and streamers and content creators like myself are temporarily moving to other titles to fill in the void. Although the tales of this game dying, which have been around since day one of Sea of Thieves, are totally not valid, and now watch as all those people come into the comments to prove that Sea of Thieves is dying, while subscribed to a Sea of Thieves YouTuber and watching a Sea of Thieves YouTube channel. But Sea of Thieves is going through its roughest patch ever. I mean, it's obvious. 2025, for this very reason, needs to hit hard. Obviously, we need some extensive stability improvements, both network and game client needs a massive overhaul, but aside from that, we need another Pirates of the Caribbean.
I was acting.
I mean, something as hard-hitting as that. Something that makes you click and point at the screen like Leonardo DiCaprio. Adding new missions to factions, or new ways to play, or new tools or weapons simply doesn't scratch that itch. 2024 is testimony to that. In 2025, Sea of Thieves needs to give us, as we refer to in the UK, a Bobby Dazzler.
Oh, it's a Bobby Dazzler, isn't it? Yeah, man, Bobby Dazzler. Yeah, it feels good, doesn't it? Mm-hmm.
It needs to pick from that ever-repetitive cherry tree of feedback, the cries in the dark that are now losing hope. And although there is an extensively huge amount of things that people want from Sea of Thieves, the biggest wants are simply three things. A new area and adventure mode to explore, a new ship type or different version of pre-existing ones, and a completely new faction. In my 7 years for making content for this game and live streaming this game, those are the three biggest asks. I mean, sure, we did get the Reapers, but let's be honest, they're not really a faction. And sure, we have Hourglass factions, but again, they're not really a faction. As for new areas to explore, unfortunately, besides the Devil's Roar that was supposed to be in release, so that doesn't really count, the only new areas we've had to explore have been mostly Tall Tale driven, or puzzle driven, such as the shrines from Season 4. Treasuries don't count as they're just a Wish.com fort, and Phantom Forts are, well, Temu. But one of the main reasons Tall Tales generated so much hype wasn't because of the story element, but because the areas were new and never seen before. We finally had some new decor to admire and new islands to traverse, and it made the game feel refreshed and unique once again. Let down by the fact that most of these new areas were not in the main game world, and revisiting them again really had no purpose to your play session. Now, I do agree with only a small amount of ships per server, expanding the world would reduce the player interaction. But now with the new mechanics such as the Sea of the Damn Portals and now the diving mechanic, could we just not use these mechanics to surface into another small shared world? That's how I see it going in the future if that was ever going to happen. And as much as a lot of us are getting sick and tired of people thinking their idea for an ice zone is unique, and we've heard it a million times now, I'd certainly take an iceberg over, well, this. Any day of the week. Ship types too, another thing that has been forgotten. I remember when the Brigantine was added, the player base was so excited for that. Heck, even the rowboat generated a sizable amount of cheers from the back of the room, and ship types don't just add something fun. They completely change the entire dynamic of the game. Personally, I'd love to see a true solo vessel come to the game. I made a video on this recently and it'll be appearing on the top right now. Failing that, of course, just an alt variation of each ship type with the same crew crew size, but slightly change stats. For example, you could have a galleon or a frigate, the frigate being more about speed and traversability, but lacking the firepower compared to a galleon. Just some food for thought. And moving on to factions, well, aside from the Hunter's Call, which is thankfully being updated in Season 15, we've essentially been doing the same A to B loot hauling for the same 4 factions for 7 years now. As I said before, Reapers don't count, and let's not mention the Sea Dogs. The government doesn't care about the veterans and we should respect them. A completely fresh faction, just like a new zone or a new ship type, would generate a sizable amount of hype. Again, I made a whole video on that about a year ago, once again, appearing in the top right. Shameful plugs are fine when it's your own video, by the way, so shh. But this, I feel, is the direction Sea of Thieves needs to go in 2025. Pick 1 or even 2 from that list and just roll with it. 2025 needs that Pirates Life hype train that we haven't had for 3.5 years. Yes, it's been 3.5 years. Because I honestly don't think we can bucket this ship much longer before it sinks. That said, I am cautiously optimistic because they did mention at EGX that the Dark Brethren would come as a faction in 2025. Performance optimizations are actually being worked on right now and not just a footnote in patch notes, and story-driven narratives will return. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do. So, pirates, remember to stand on that mound of trust, swivel to the rising sun of hope, pull out your cutlass of copium, and slap that subscribe barrel!